Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Apologies for the late recording and publication of this video. A little bit later than normal. I tried to do it at least the day after a game. But as anyone that got to the end of the last video, fair play to you for doing so. You would have known that I took a couple of days off because it was my 20th wedding anniversary, and to reward Mrs. Gold for amazingly getting through that amount of time with me, 2 decades, is incredible. And what a service. What a service. What a punishment, some would say. We went away for a couple of days. We popped across to Disneyland Paris. So I didn't actually get to see the game in person. What I had to do you know what? I had a really kind of old school rubbish way of trying to keep on top of it, which shows me how too connected we are with the world today. I don't know, but I had to, in between going on rides and in queues and stuff, just look for updates on the match. Don't worry, I'm not going to do a whole video based on updates. I did manage to yesterday watch the entire game in full, which I kind of feel is more an achievement, because once you know how it ended and you know kind of how disappointing it was, to then subject yourself to 90 plus minutes of it. I caught like the full thing they put out on Spurs Play, so I watched that, and maybe aptly I watched it mostly in the queue for Tower of Terror, which it kind of fits quite nicely. Although to be fair, look, as I said, I was kind of getting the updates from the game and looking on social media to kind of see. And the general opinion was just one of horror, terror, chaos, awful, the worst game ever. I don't think it was the worst game ever. I'm not saying it was good by any stretch of the imagination, and I think Wolves absolutely deserved to win, which we'll talk about. But yeah, I kind of, the game I saw wasn't quite as horrendous as the one I was expecting, purely based on social media. But I should really stress, because I know people get sometimes very upset when you say things like that. It wasn't a good game, and I'm not really praising many of the team at all. It was just a real off day, I think, across the pitch in many areas. There's only maybe 1 or 2 players that came out of it in credit. It wasn't good. What it kind of felt like for me, it was just a stark reminder, really. Anyone that's been to Disneyland Paris, there's a bit of a pun there. Stark Avengers. Don't worry, that was very, very crowbarred in there, and it wasn't meant to be. But it was a stark reminder of just how much of a young team this is in transition right now. It is. You're going to get days like that. You just are. They're frustrating, and people get very kind of concerned or worried or fit it into a bigger pattern. And yeah, there's been a few kind of unconvincing displays in recent weeks, which, we'll go through lots of the reasons about and why, and players trying to fit back into it, rusty players, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, you are just going to have games like this. For me, it felt exactly like that. It felt like a team that is, being built, and especially with a young one. An average age which was very young, although I guess slightly increased with Emerson and Ben Davies coming in, but still. Look, we've spoken about this before. I hate going over old ground, but I kind of have to repeat it at times, because obviously we get a bit carried away maybe sometimes in a season, or we expect more, or we demand more. We have higher standards, whatever way you want to put it. But as we said when he first joined, if you talk to the supporters of any Ange Postecoglou team, they will pretty much tell you that the first season, it's an up and downer. It's a roller coaster. You can see very much a pattern of playing being built, but you can also see maybe a squad that it doesn't entirely fit that, and then what comes of that, and how some games it will look like it's coming together, and other games you're left tearing your hair out because, why haven't they done that? Why is there no attacking fluidity now? Why are they conceding so many goals? And it is all kind of part of this process. And I don't hate to be the person that says, oh, wait till next season. Because look, we're Spurs fans. We've waited long enough. There is always, why does it have to always be next season? I get that. But I did kind of, and we've all said, anyone that's reported on it and anyone that's spoken about him has always said that Postecoglou's second season is the one where it starts to really click into gear. So and I'm not dismissing this season by any stretch of the imagination, because I still think there's a lot to play for. But I do think you've also got to kind of have that in the back of your mind when you have days like Saturday against Wolves. It's because it's just everything. He's ripping up everything behind the scenes. He really is. I cannot stress how much that's been happening at Spurs. It's drastic changes. It's not just simple tweaks. It is drastic changes he's making. And in these first seasons at any club, and this will be the same at Spurs, there'll be certain players that struggle to adapt. There'll be certain members of staff that struggle to adapt. There'll be people within the club that don't like everything that's happening. They don't like the direction that he's taken them in. And maybe when they see injuries, they start to worry, because at every club there's this massive injuries in the first season where the players and the physios and the sports science staff kind of struggle to adapt to this ridiculously kind of relentless style of training and playing. And I think, then doubts appear and things like that. And it's, Postecoglou loves that. It's really weird. Well, I don't think it is really weird. I suppose it's not for him. It's something that he knows is going to come. He knows people are going to doubt him. He knows people are going to doubt the way they play. And that's, I think he said it himself, that's when he comes alive. That's when he really feels like, okay, brilliant. Because he's been doing it for 26, 27, 28 years now of coaching. He's been through this process so many times where there's stumbles and missteps. People doubt what's happening. There's criticism and everything. But he knows, I guess, from all of those almost 3 decades worth of going through the process, what comes next. And that's kind of, I guess, what brings him that confidence in his style of football, regardless of whatever we all might think. There's plenty to look at the system and wonder, is that going to work? Is he being found out in a higher league? Obviously, that's one that people will always come out with. Are his methods too extreme for players to I guess, deal with over the course of a season? Are other teams able to cotton on at this sort of level to what he does? There's lots of question marks, but he loves those. He absolutely loves those because, like I say, it's been there. It's stepping up each time, I guess, in the stature of the league, but each time in his mind, he's kind of knocked those away with evidence of results, silverware, whatever you want to call it. And I think there's also the element, as we saw this weekend, it's about the squad being able to handle Postecoglou football, not just the team, and that's key. We know about the ability for him to make changes and not drop the comfort in playing his style. That's another thing. Just to kind of stress, as I always say on these, as I wasn't at the game, I'm not going to go into like a ridiculous depth into the games as I normally do, which cause anyone that wants shorter videos nightmares, because I wasn't there. I don't feel like I absorbed enough of the atmosphere, saw what was happening around the pitch. Wasn't even in the press conference pre-match or post-match to be able to kind of see the way he acted, the way he was. Judging from what I've heard and what I've seen, he was a little bit not short, but I guess, I've said before, you'll have heard me say, it can be a bit of contrarian. He likes to say the opposite to what you maybe think he's going to say or what he thinks you want him to say. And it seems like that was the case in aspects of the press conference. But there was also some interesting stuff as well. So we'll have a little chat about that, but not to the same kind of degree of detail that I try to normally go into with these things. But there's loads to kind of still discuss about what I saw, even watching on my phone screen while stood in a queue outside the Tower of Terror. But yeah, and Postecoglou himself, we talk about those various things, the doubts and things like that. He is a guy, by his own admission, that continues to adapt. He says he can't afford to, as a manager, stand still. He has adapted everywhere he's gone to a different style, a different league. He will take things on board. You'll see, I'd imagine, the Postecoglou Celtic team it won't look the same as the Tottenham Postecoglou team. And the Tottenham Postecoglou team that started this season will not look like the Postecoglou team that is playing midway through next season. Please let there be a next season. You never know with the way Spurs are. But you know what I mean. So I think the key for him is that whatever happens, the central themes of his system have to remain the same, and that everyone sticks to the plan. We know with experience, that's kind of why I kind of paused and laughed at that last suggestion of mine, because Spurs don't normally stick to the plan. That's been their biggest problem and their biggest failing in recent years. We've seen it. Flip-flop from this idea to the next, to this mentality, to this kind of football, to this style of manager, to this type of person, I guess, with behind the scenes as well, whether it be directors of football. There's been so many kind of slaloming changes of direction and plan that, yeah, of course, there's going to be this natural fear over, can Spurs actually stick to the plan? But I just kind of get the feeling that if they allow Postecoglou to just do what he's going to do, just look at what he's done elsewhere. We'll see. We'll see. I'm right now. I can't see anything that tells me that Spurs aren't going to let him do what he does. Just purely because, look, I really can't stress this enough. This was their second defeat in the past 10 Premier League matches. I've seen social media. Like I say, I saw it on Saturday while I was unable to kind of be at the game or watch it. And I can see some very valid concerns, I think, and worries, because you don't know, 100% what's going to happen next. Just kind of Postecoglou feels he does. But I also see the hysterical kind of extremes of way people look at it as well. They could quite rightly say in both directions as well. But I just find it's interesting that it's almost like we, and this is media and fans all in general, we kind of want change. We want things to be different, but then we don't always have the patience for that. At the first sign that it hasn't quite run as smoothly as we want, there's panic. And it's interesting because that's the very nature of change. It's not easy. It's Postecoglou's first season, like I say, it's always full of friction. It will. There will be things that don't go right, and there will be aspects of his system that don't gel straight away and don't bed in. I mean, he's been telling us for months that the attacking side is the one that's got so much growth still to happen. And we're seeing that, and we're like, oh no, but there were loads of goals before. What's happened? I think we almost kind of got lulled into the start of the season when they just started very well, without kind of taking into account all of the variables that would come next, and the injuries and the players coming back from injuries and the problems that would cause. And many other things that we're going to talk about as well. But I found it quite interesting because I just looked back to I found some quotes that he came out with 2 months ago. I think it was just before the match at the Etihad. And he was asked about his style of football and, would he ever contemplate changing it in any way or kind of adapting it. And it's quite interesting. The way I kind of see this is, you remember the old Pochettino idea of the furniture in the house and the house needing new furniture within it when he was speaking about the stadium. I kind of feel like, to take that on a step, Postecoglou's taken all the furniture that he's found. He's put it all out on the front lawn while he looks inside the house. And he's like, okay, now which bits of that furniture will fit back inside the way I want this house to be? And that's kind of the way he's gone about this with his squad and with everything. And he's kind of worked out what will look right within my redesigned home and what bits need replacing. And that's kind of the element of, I think, the key thing to not only in front of the scenes in terms of the team, but I think behind the scenes as well, and really getting that side right. And I just found it interesting going back to these quotes from 2 months ago, and how he explained the way his teams play football. He said, I don't do what I do to try to prove a point. You look at the top teams and there's one common trait amongst them. They all have a plan. They invest in that plan and they stick to it. They don't shy away from it at the first difficulty. If you look at City, Arsenal, Liverpool, all the teams that have dominated in recent years, they have a plan and stick to it. And you have to, because whatever you believe in, whatever you strongly believe in as a person, only gets tested in the toughest of times. It doesn't get tested when things are going well. And for me, these are the important times, because these will show what kind of football team we want to be. You can sort of shy away from it, say we have injuries, we're playing Man City away, but you're either going to be a club that tries to knock off the big clubs or you're a big club. You are one or the other. My hope and my ambition for this club is to make it a big club, and to do that you have to be successful and win things. To win things you have to have a plan, stick to it and believe in it, and be prepared that during the tough times when you get scrutinised and invariably people ask questions, which is fair enough because that's what needs to happen, but again, it's the only way you can test yourself. There is no point everyone saying you're brilliant. That's not a good way to live your life. The best way to keep challenging yourself is when people challenge you. So you need to be prepared for that and take that. You need to show some backbone through that time, and that's what I believe. So that is my methodology. I'm not going there to show people, watch me and I'll take them on. It is because I think that is the way forward for us. So yeah, it is. This is why kind of we can all, I guess, get as kind of hit up about certain things as we want. But ultimately, yeah, Postecoglou kind of has an idea of what he's doing. And I guess, yeah, we can't kind of bail out after the first signs of a couple of bits of problems. And I should, again, stress, it's little problems. It's little problems. 2 defeats in the last 10 Premier League games is not a major issue. 6 defeats in the entire, 25-game Premier League season we've had so far is not a major issue. Going out of the cups, that's a disappointment. There's no getting away from that. That was very disappointing. Differing reasons for those cup exits, but still very disappointing. But certainly in terms of the league, we're not talking about a team that is in mid-table. We're not talking about a team kind of hovering in a difficult place. We're talking about a team that is on the cusp of the top 4. And yes, 100% agree, because it will with the people that I can hear in the back of my mind right now saying things like, oh yeah, but obviously this is part of a worrying trend, or this has happened and it's only getting worse, and things like that. Yeah, there's definitely elements that need to be fixed. They need to be sorted in a weird way. Although you want to get straight back into action as quickly as possible, having this 2 weeks to kind of work on a lot of things is not the worst thing in the world. I would hope that you'll see a better Spurs at the end of it for it. Yeah, I do feel like that start to the season did lull us in a little bit. And in a weird way, all these players coming back, I actually felt Spurs kind of had a better rhythm to their play during the period when so many people were out, which is weird because it shouldn't be. But then maybe it was purely because the same players kind of were in their groove, were in their rhythm. Yeah, they were a bit knackered, but they had no kind of other concept other than just playing the Postecoglou way to the best of their ability, because that was getting them through games. If anything, they went too far, and Postecoglou was saying, you can't let the football be a crutch that you kind of lean on. You've got to provide the rest of it. Whereas maybe now you've got so many kind of players coming back and that haven't played in the system for a while. I think Maddison's a good example. He's out for almost 3 months. You've had Basuma and Son and Sarr all away at the Africa Cup of Nations or Asian Cup for, 6 weeks now. You've had Bentancur coming in and out of the team. And I think that is going to make a difference. You've got new people like Timo Werner coming in as well. So I think kind of probably chucking these people into it, while ultimately the team is going to be better for it because they're strong quality players. Right now, it probably has lost a little bit of its rhythm, and I kind of understand that to a degree. You look at the stats, it was disjointed for the game at the weekend, and I think probably the thing that annoys me the most, and it's something you'll have heard me saying about this video in these videos for previous managers and previous eras, was the drop in the pressing. It annoys me no end. And right now, even more so than ever, because there are players that have been out for a while, so should be fresher. There are so many squad options that there is competition that should be pushing each other on. That I don't understand. I don't understand why you would, just kind of not aggressively press from the first minute to the last, really, because you've got 5 subs to make as well. And I think for me, from watching the interviews after the game and the press conference, that to me seemed the thing that Postecoglou was the most frustrated with, was the fact that you need that dynamism, that aggression and that movement, because the whole Postecoglou system hinges really on the effective movement, not only from attacking sense, but also winning the ball back all across the pitch, because if you aggressively are going in to get that ball back, then the counter-attacks become far more difficult as well, because the opposition haven't got that ability to spin and play those passes to players over the top running through. But in terms of stats, they're all still there in terms of 71% Spurs possession to Wolves 29, which is mad. 664 passes to Wolves 214. Spurs had 15 shots at goal, but could only put 4 of them on target. And for me, because this was the thing, this was the when I said earlier about it wasn't as awful as I was expecting it to be, was because a lot of the build-up play was actually quite nice. And when I say build-up, I'm not saying final third. I'm saying a little bit kind of further on a bit. Yeah, it was a bit slow at times, but ultimately there were quite a lot of nice little moves where they got around Wolves players, and then it was about the final ball. Or then it was about the finish. And the final ball sometimes was just horrendous. They were going all over the shop, or they were too weak and they weren't even beating the man in front of them. And likewise, there were some occasions when the ball was going through, it was at 11 occasions when the ball went through and the shots at goal were terrible. They were going way off target. They were just awful, awful shots. And that is this element of the attacking side that's got to grow 100%. And whether that is with different personnel or whether it is with the current personnel that just need to kind of train on it even more, on get more of an understanding of what is being asked of them. I would say Wolves are very good, absolutely. I hate it, when I kind of do one of these videos and I realise afterwards I made it so much about Spurs' deficiencies that I didn't actually praise the opposition. And Wolves played well. They were very efficient with the ball. They had 7 of their 12 shots were on target. And Gary O'Neill's side just did that thing that a lot of teams, will do when they go away from home or to bigger clubs, and they will soak up pressure and hit on the break. That's an absolutely valid and perfectly fine way to play football. I've always hated that football snobbery where that's a bad thing. It's at Spurs, when it worked, it was beautiful under previous coaches. But the problem was it didn't work enough, and also it's only one way of playing, and I don't think it's a way of playing if you want to dominate matches or leagues or be a top club. I guess I think that's probably my aspect. My issue with it from that regard is that I think it's a terrific tactic, and I think for one-off games, whatever. I know it's not the Postecoglou way, but I do understand how in certain circumstances it works. The Spurs have gone to the Etihad and done it loads of times, and there's been thrilling games as well. But I think as a tactic that you do week in, week out, you're probably not going to see many teams that are at the pinnacle that do that. And I guess that's a different side to it. And again, that's not to do it down at all, because I think Gary O'Neill's done a really good job in a quick amount of time as well. And he's got some very talented players as well. He's got, Neto's superb. Watching him back, even on a little screen, that is a player. You can see why Spurs have got an interest in him, because he fits the Postecoglou system. He would fit into it like a glove. He really would fit it like a glove. What's he got? I've written down his stats somewhere. 11 assists and 3 goals in 19 matches. He's only 23. It feels like he's been around forever, but he's only 23. And what I say about O'Neill having been there kind of not a long amount of time, he was there quite literally thrown to the Wolves August. I think it was just before the season started, so he didn't have a pre-season. I've seen some people, I understand where they're coming from. They've said on social media, he's had less time than Postecoglou, yet his team have a defined style of play. What I would say to that is, yes, he's done a fine job, but he was building on a foundation that wasn't too dissimilar from what he was trying to build on. This is quite a simple way of saying it. Whereas someone like Postecoglou is coming in, looking at the foundations and going, no way, and ripping that up and having to start from scratch. So it's a longer process. It's a more difficult process. And I think that kind of explains that a little bit for me. And I should also state, when we talk about style of play, a couple of weeks ago, people were raving about the Postecoglou style of football and how exciting and enjoyable it was in the Premier League. So, when Spurs are clicking and they're having these kind of days when they're not a little bit off key in key departments, they're playing a football that has got people standing up and taking notice of. And I don't think one game or a couple of iffy home first halves is going to change that. As much as kind of people will want you to kind of hear that. And also, what I would say, because I've seen some people really kind of going on the O'Neill thing, and he is a good manager. He's, I think he's done well at a lot of the places he's been. But to suggest I've seen some people saying he's doing a better job than Postecoglou. What I would say is, you only have to look at that. They've got 12 points less than Spurs. Got a -1 goal difference this season as well. They've scored 13 fewer than Spurs, and they've conceded 2 more actually as well. So yeah, I think understandably you can say about, I don't know, the quality of the squad or whatever you want, but to kind of say he's done a better job this season, I think he's done a very good job. But I actually still think what Postecoglou has done, not least with a certain player kind of heading off on the start of the season, I think he's done a terrific job, and I think there's a lot more to come. Yeah, and the other key thing is the squad, as we mentioned. He made it very clear, Postecoglou, that I think he said ahead of the January one that he would need at least 2 more transfer windows, which takes you into the start of the next one, to really feel like the squad was his kind of squad, a Postecoglou system squad. And I think that was probably never more obvious, I guess, than Saturday in the fullbacks. Because, look, they've got a lot of good sides to them, Ben Davies and Emerson Royal. There are a lot of attributes, performed admirably in positions that are not their natural ones this season for Postecoglou. And that's why you're never going to hear him criticise them in a million years. You just won't. Unless they do something incredibly deliberate or daft or whatever. They've given everything for him. So you're not going to hear him criticise them. But they are not Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie. They're very different kinds of players. And thus they're not going to be natural replacements for those 2 players. I think I've said a few times now that Pedro Porro unfortunately was due an injury. He just hadn't had one yet. And now that has come along. And look, Porro and Udogie between them have contributed 11 assists and 3 goals. You're not going to be able to replace that with 2 more defensively minded fullbacks. It's just not the way it's going to work. And it just kind of, you can see they're not as comfortable coming inside into that inverted number 10 role that is asked of Udogie and Porro. They just don't have that natural inclination to it. I would say I felt kind of Ben Davies watching it again on a small screen, so I didn't see a lot of the runs off the ball that you see when you're there and the extra movement. But I did feel like Ben Davies gave it his best shot. You could argue about the quality of some of the things he did, but I felt he was attempting to do it. I mean, some would maybe say almost being too attacking at times. But he did end the game with 3 key passes, which is more than anyone in the Spurs side. I think it was joint best on the pitch with Paulo Sarabia from Wolves. Davies also had 3 shots at goal, only 1 on target. And he missed that last gasp header, didn't he? I don't know how he managed. Ben Davies is probably one of those people that I would kind of almost put money on to get the ball on target, at least with that header towards the end. But he just absolutely made a mess of it and sent it away. He also went on 1 dribble. And look, he is more comfortable sticking out wide. He prefers to be out there and let Sonny kind of come in and do what he does. They normally combine quite well. But he was also trying to get crosses into the box. He had 6 of them he put into the box. None of them reached their target, to be fair. But he was trying. I think you could see that. And look, I know there's some people who are just going to say, rubbish. But for me, kind of watching that, I felt out of the 2, he was attempting to do what Postecoglou wants him to do. And that's kind of is the key to the system working. On the other flank, Emerson's not going to bring you what Porro does. We've spoken this at length before. He's, I think, one of the better defensive players that the squad has got. I think he showed his terrific versatility when he came into the centre when he had to. And his stats were probably the best on the day, defensive-wise. 4 tackles, 3 interceptions, 1 clearance, and 1 key block he made late on. I can't remember who had the shot at Wolves. But yeah, if Emerson hadn't been there, it would have been an even heavier scoreline. But there's no getting away from the fact that he doesn't really contribute in attacking areas as much as others. And that's there. I mean, that's there in the stats. That's not something, that's not an opinion. No key passes, no shots. 2 crosses he made, both off target, so he wasn't pinging in loads of crosses. 2 long balls he attempted that kind of went off target. There was one that kind of had Postecoglou putting his head in his hands. It was in his own half. He wasn't really under pressure, and he just kind of launched the ball over Ben Davies' head and out of play. He's just kind of got that mindset. And again, something we've said before, so I apologise for repeating myself. And I know there's some people out there that are very, very Emerson, what's the word for it nowadays? They use like stands, is it, or something? I don't know. But they're massive fans of Emerson. And I get it. He's a lovely guy. He's a terrific guy, great character, one of the best professionals you will find in that football club, a terrific trainer. Like I say, I think a really good defender as well. I think there's so many games for Spurs when he's absolutely kept them in it with some brilliant defending. But if you're asking him to be an attacking player, that's just not really part of his game. And I know there's some people that get very upset when you say that, but unfortunately, it's kind of borne out in the stats. It's there to be seen. You're not criticising Emerson by saying that. You're just saying that that's not part of his game. It's as simple as that. It's like, it's like asking a striker to go in at centre back. It's not going to be. They're not going to be as comfortable. They're not going to do things that naturally have got that raw ability to do. It's not a kind of a massive slight on them. It's just the way it is. And I kind of feel like in the attacking areas, he will look to pass inside first, and that little moment of hesitation as he looks to do that prevents then him getting into kind of an area where he can then influence play, or he can make a run. And the irony is that when he does make attacking runs, he's actually quite good at it. I've said this before. There's been times in games when he gets into really good positions, but he doesn't do that enough because it's not his first natural thought to do. And I think Saturday, that's because I watched it yesterday, you could have got away with one of Porro or Doggy being out, because then, the system's slightly lopsided, but you can kind of deal with it. But I think having both out, it was essentially like blocking 2 pipes in the system, and it just was not flowing through at all. And it put too much pressure, I think, on the middle of the pitch, which became very cluttered, especially against a very organised, well-drilled Wolves side as well. So, I mean, it makes you see how they're probably going to have to go into the market in the summer. I think I've said before, I assume they'd get 1 fullback. The more I look at it, maybe they go for 2. Maybe they go for a left-sided one. I mean, one way out is maybe you look for another centre-back who can also play as a fullback in that kind of style, who's got that technical ability and a bit of pace about them. I think you need 2. Maybe you look for someone that fits all of that. I mean, technically Van der Ven can play as a left back. He's done that in the past, and he's got the technical ability probably to do that role as well. I was kind of wondering that, like, it looks like the Doggy should hopefully be back in time for the Palace game, whereas Porro maybe not. I haven't even mentioned Fraser Forster, fractured foot, out for a few months. That's rubbish for him. But sorry, back to that. Do you look to change it up in some kind of way? Do you go a bit rogue? Do you play Pat Matasar, who's very versatile? Do you try him as a right back? Do you bring Dragusin into the centre of defence and maybe put Romero as a right back, knowing that he's kind of got that technical ability in types areas to be able to play that? Could he? I mean, he loves to charge up the pitch enough. Could he be a number 10? Personally, I don't know if you take your kind of leader of the back line out of it. Do you... I mean, obviously this would only be in the Doggy scenario, but would you put Van der Ven maybe on the left and bring Dragusin into that back 4 as well? There's different ways around it. Or do you go back 3 and play Kulusevski as your right wing back, perhaps? I don't know if Postecoglou is a back 3 from the start kind of guy. I think I've said that before. But... there are different options. My gut tells me he's probably going to persevere with probably Emerson if O'Doggie's back. I don't think Ben Davies maybe will be required in 2 weeks' time to do that. But and like I said, if you have one of them, maybe you can adapt to it. And you just kind of the other players have to be aware that they're not playing alongside Porro. They're going to have to do things a different way, and it has different benefits. I mean, Emerson, they know, will be able to maybe cover them better, perhaps from a defensive aspect. Porro's worked on that a lot, but maybe Emerson can defend behind them a little bit better, gives them a bit more of a cushion to go on and be even more attacking themselves. I think this is what Postecoglou said before, that different players bring different attributes to a team, and sometimes you get different benefits from that as well. You may get things that don't work as well, but you do get kind of scenarios that you didn't or wouldn't happen with a different kind of player. Look, in a parallel universe, your backups would be Jed Spence and Ryan Sessegnon, probably. Two young, kind of hungry 23-year-old players who have got pace, got decent technique. They would be your right back and left back backups, but for differing reasons, of course, they are not that. For Jed Spence, obviously, had that few weeks with Postecoglou, just never convinced him, headed off, went to Leeds, didn't convince Daniel Farke, and now is in Genoa, where he started quite well, but he's been an unused sub in the last couple of games. I am going to do a little loan roundup at the end of this, by the way, because it's a Monday one. Normally when I do these on like a weekend day, they haven't all played their games, so it kind of is rendered a little bit pointless. But yeah, Jed Spence not quite working out for him at the moment, and it'd be interesting to see how he deals with that, because that's kind of the key for him, isn't it? Is whether he maintains his levels despite the frustration that will come of that. And if he does, he'll get back in that team, and then it's about him keeping a place. For Sess, it's a different scenario. Poor Ryan Sessegnon, honestly. There's this kind of real nasty side of kind of abuse that he gets, as if it's his fault. There's just nothing he can do about it. So if you're not aware, just to give you a very brief recap, and then also what's happened this weekend. So Ryan Sessegnon hadn't played in about 11 months before he came on late on against Burnley in the FA Cup. They weren't planning to use him. There was no intention of using him. He was just to be there, to be involved in the matchday experience, in terms of just kind of getting his confidence up. Unfortunately, the way the game kind of panned out, he had to bring on Sess and played him probably for a little bit longer than he would have wanted to. I think he stayed on for about 14, 15 minutes. And unfortunately, late in the game, he, I can't remember exactly did, but he felt some kind of issue that gave him a little bit of a setback. So that meant he was more time out. It's all around kind of, he's had that surgery on his hamstring with the thinking it was going to kind of, the idea was that it should cure it for the long term. But obviously after 11 months, and I think I asked Postecoglou about this a couple of weeks ago, essentially your body's got to adjust to playing football again. You're going to have little associated issues with it as well, and you're going to feel the odd bit of pain and stuff like that. So they were taking it slowly. They were kind of, in Postecoglou's words the other day, building up a body of work for him, as in on the training pitches. And then the plan, as it was on Saturday, was not to have him with the first team, was to give him some game time with the under-21s to build that up. It's so rubbish to even have to say this, because I just feel so sorry for him. 33 minutes in, under-21s game at Hotspur away against West Ham, I think it was. He goes for a cross, kind of really awkwardly connects with it, and you see him kind of crumple to the floor. He stays down there for a while, lies on his back, looks like a guy that just wants the world to go, the ground to swallow him up. Stop the game for a while. Physios come over, work on him, kind of try to help him. They eventually kind of, takes a while, they get him over to the fence, and you could see he tries to kind of walk around the pitch, but he's actually struggling to move to that degree. So what the physios do, I presume they must have them in their bags. They kind of have to put them together, these crutches that will clip together. And eventually, he had to use two crutches to get off the pitch and back into the Hotspur way to kind of get further treatment. From what I understand, it's another hamstring problem. On the other side, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest with you. It's probably a good thing in terms of the one that was the more problematic and needed surgery. It's not that one. But look, if you're just going to be constantly worried about both sides going, oh, I don't know. It's just so rubbish for him. It really is. So we'll find out. I'll maybe find out a little bit more this week. We're not going to see Postecoglou again until next week. But I'll probably be able to get more details on that in the kind of next week or so. But yeah, it is another hamstring problem. But from what I understand on the other side, I think that's the information I'm getting. I just feel so sorry for him. He was 16 years old. He broke into the scene as one of the most exciting players in the English game. And now here we are 7 years on and he hasn't been able to get back there. And I see people kind of revising history. He's like, he's rubbish. He hasn't got a talent. He hasn't got this, hasn't got that. When Ryan Sessegnon, was kind of in his pomp, and it sounds ridiculous to say in his pomp when he was like a teenager, he was flying at defences. He had terrific skill levels. He had technique, he had ability, he had an eye for goal, eye for a cross. And he can defend as well. I've seen him have very good games again. City a couple of times, maybe Liverpool. In those big games, he defended really well. But it's just his body. His body is letting him down. I really hope that he can get through this period in his career and come out the other side, because just watching the footage of him in the under-21s match, you could just see he was just devastated. Look, hopefully the crutches was a precautionary thing to help him off there. I do worry a little bit about the fact that it was to a degree that he couldn't kind of walk on it, or maybe there was a fear of making it worse. Maybe that's why. But yeah, we'll find out exactly what's gone on there and what it means. But yeah, not good. Just not good at all. So yeah, like I say, transfer window, I think we'll see kind of additions on both sides, both flanks, Postecoglou type fullbacks. I would be stunned if there's not on both sides, because Emerson gives you plenty, but I don't think he's a Postecoglou right back. I just don't think he is. With his ability to play at centre back, maybe you keep him around for that. But if I'm Emerson Royal as well, I'd like to probably play regular first team football. I don't know if he's going to get that under Postecoglou as much as he would like. But as I always say, a brilliant person to have around the squad and the ability to fill in various roles. So yeah, we'll see. But that's one for the summer. That is one for the summer. At the moment, there's more immediate problems for him to fix. Again, not massive ones. Just little tweaks to get the system working again and in its groove. I thought Richarlison's hold-up play was pretty poor. And that's something I've praised him for in the recent weeks. I feel like in the last couple of games, he's lost a little bit of his own rhythm. Obviously, he was scoring goals for fun. He hasn't scored in the last couple. But more so, I think the hold-up play not working was a bigger issue for me, because if he's not going to score, if his hold-up play is good, then he's bringing other people in and they're going to be able to profit from that and potentially score goals. But yeah, he was... it was just kind of bouncing off him a fair few times. It wasn't his best. Look, I know the service wasn't great into him either, but even more so in those moments when that ball comes to you, it's got to stick. And that allows others to then run around you and get into space, and it takes one or two people out of the opposition defence because they're trying to deal with you. And I guess Postecoglou's got to decide with him over the next 2 weeks, is that something he works on a lot, or is it something, maybe it's a time to freshen up again and maybe put Son through the middle. Son's impact, he was very, very quiet. As was Kulusevski, goal aside. Kulusevski had more efforts at goal. I think he had 4 efforts on goal. But what kind of worried me a little bit about Son was just kind of how isolated he was. Son had, I think he had no shots at goal and no dribbles. For a player that's known for both of those things, that's you're not doing it right if you're not getting him involved to that degree. So yeah, I did feel also the midfield was as much to blame for a lot of the attacking issues, because there were a number of times I could see, even on my little phone screen, that the attacking players were spinning and turning for a pass that never came. Sometimes, yes, that's the fullbacks hesitating, not being used to playing those balls. But I did feel that on occasions it was the midfield that were just taking an extra beat before they hit that pass. And it just, the connection wasn't there between the midfield and the attack. So that didn't help at all either. And also that midfield, it's got to also act as a shield for the defence. So the defence isn't as exposed with the balls over the top that come. So, the midfield for me is the area I'd actually say is the most concern. It sounds weird because the attack I know is Postecoglou's in terms of the area for most growth, as he keeps calling it. But for me, that midfield, it's not clicking. And bearing in mind that was the trio that started the season so well together, Basuma, Maddison and Sarr. But I thought Basuma was okay. I thought defensively he was quite good. I mean, I've got his stats here somewhere. He had 5 tackles and 3 interceptions. But again, for me, the issue with Basuma right now is where's that dominance gone at the other end of the pitch? He was a guy that, could keep the ball, could bring in 2 or 3 different players towards him and then release it or dribble through them. And that's why Spurs early in the season were able to get past these teams with a low block that would counter-attack them, because they could just draw them out with someone like Basuma. Whereas when he's not doing that, that puts so much pressure on Maddison, who's not quite there yet in terms of his sharpness. And it does. It puts a lot of pressure on him to try to be the only really creative player that can kind of carve through teams. And I think the opposition sees that. If it's just him that they know to worry about, then they can just look for all of the things that he'd normally do and counter them. Whereas when you've got various players that will all bring something different, then it's far more difficult to defend against as well. The defence did look wobbly on the break, absolutely. And I did feel like you've got to, like I say, Postecoglou's not faultless at all. I do think the fact that they're still conceding from set pieces is a problem. The first goal was woeful. I mean, he was absolutely on his own to head that ball into the net. So, I don't think that's something that can be kind of glossed over. I know he said the other day when I asked him, when was it? It was after the Everton game. I said about, conceding from 2 set pieces when you knew that Everton were going to be so good on set pieces. And he said something along the lines of, but they had at least 30. So it's not like we defended that badly. It's like, but if you concede even 1, you've still conceded another set-piece goal. And that's something... Look, I understand entirely that he doesn't really want to criticise the defence because, it's a young defence and they're working hard to become this new unit and they're taking on so many new things that he's asking of them, and they've had injuries and they've had to work around it. That's absolutely fine. But it doesn't mean that you can't improve in aspects of it. And set-pieces is definitely one. Because, just... to allow João Gomez to be in there in that position to have a completely free header into the far corner, that's a failure of the setup, of the system, and it's clearly not the way that Mile Jednak with defensive set pieces and Matthew Wells with the defensive work he does with them would have drilled them into doing into what to do. And I still maintain that Guillermo Vicario is far too good a goalkeeper to be have as few clean sheets as he's had this season. You should have so many more, and especially with the quality of defenders in front of him as well. Look, we kind of know that they're going to leave space at times for counter-attacks. That's just kind of the way, and especially against a team like Wolves who play in that certain style. But what I would say is that, don't give them then extra opportunities from set pieces, which is something that you can control. So, I mean, I don't know whether it's kind of more of a zonal marking thing or not, or just getting used to a new way, I suppose, of doing things. And but it's allowing too many opportunities from set pieces. And like I say, that's the thing that you can fix. He was asked about his team conceding too many chances. And he said, I don't think we do. Today we conceded 2 or 3 good chances on the counter-attack. I think one of them was offside. But against Wolves, that's going to happen. A lot of that is just sort of game state. Like I say, if you get a foothold in the game and put them under pressure, that limits the opportunities they have the other way. Ultimately, when you're not successful, everything looks like it's garbage. That's not the way I look at football. The same way I didn't think we were super great leading into this game. We're still trying to build something, as I keep saying, lay some foundations. I think a lot of our defensive work this season has been outstanding, to be honest, considering the players we have in there, the experience they have. It's been one of our strengths, and we will keep trying to improve in all areas. Yeah, I agree with him. I do think in aspects they've been excellent, but I keep coming back to these set pieces. And I just feel in recent weeks what we had 2 against Everton, 1 against Man City. Yes, I know one of the City and Everton ones you could argue, there's a Vicario aspect to it as well. Gave away a penalty, obviously, against Brighton. Do you consider that a set piece? I don't know. Probably not nowadays, but technically kind of is. And then obviously this one against Wolves as well. Not good enough for me, but I understand where he's coming from. It is, again, like I said about the whole team, it is a team in transition, team being built. But I'm sure with the height and the ability they've got in there, they can do better than leaving men free to head the ball, which has now happened on a few occasions in quite key moments. Look, it's all fixable. I think that's the thing as well, is that this kind of thing that it's a massive problem or any kind of thing that it's a real downward spiral for Tottenham. It's not true. These are little kind of fixable things. Little elements that just have to be sharpened up, and then it kind of all gets into the groove and rhythm again. It all interlocks as well. Like I say, if you fix the midfield, I think suddenly the defence and attack look a lot better. And like he said there, Postecoglou, you fix the attack and you're putting all the pressure at the other end of the pitch, the ball isn't coming back as much. It's just not. And I think that was an element earlier in the season, was the defence wasn't having to deal with as many balls to mop up at the back because of the aggressive pressing and dynamism at the top of the pitch in keeping the ball up there. So, yeah, 100% agree with that. But, again, as he said himself, that's on him as the coach to get better. He said that in his Spurs play interview. It is on him to do that. It is a young team. Like I say, the frustration will be the lack of aggression, which is leading to these poor first halves, which is something we saw in the Conte era far too much. And he said himself, it's probably been the last couple of home games we haven't started well. In the beginning of the year we did. We're not doing anything different. Sometimes it's the mindset going into games, sometimes it's the opposition, sometimes it's just the context of the football game. Certainly for us to kind of dominate games like we want to, it does mean we need to start aggressively and try to put the opposition on the back foot. And we haven't really done that in the last 2 or 3 games. Before that we were doing that, and that gave us a foothold in matches that we're not getting at the moment. And as I said, there's no excuse for starting games slowly with this squad right now. They haven't got the fixtures to say they're knackered, and they've got the competition that you've got so many different people now in these positions that they should all be pushing each other. Because quite frankly, if you're not going to do it, someone else will. It's as simple as that. It really is. And he said, there's always I think, looking at the manager, and I get that, but I do feel like, and I'm always kind of a big person for this, that I feel like everyone looks at the manager straight away without first looking at the players and whether they're actually doing the job asked of them. I've got a good quote here from him. He said, there's no tricks, it's hard work. I'm not a magician, I'm a football manager. It's hard work, which these guys have done all year. We've got to this point, which is pretty decent on the back of some hard work, and that's what we'll keep doing. It was interesting, Dejan Kulusevski in the mix zone after the game. I saw the quotes that came out today that he spoke to reporters there, and he was kind of putting it on the players as well. And the lack of chasing back after kind of losing the ball. I think we saw that. I mean, the second goal, Basuma made a mess of it on the edge of their area. Then kind of his run back was... It really was for someone that's just lost the ball. And he kind of almost had an opportunity, even then, to still get back in the last few moments and make a proper concerted effort to get it. And he didn't. Talking of running back, there was one moment, I think it was an earlier chance that ended up being squandered by Wolves. Sonny made the most incredible run back. You have to watch back. It's on Twitter somewhere, I saw it. because I watched it in the game. I thought, wow, and then didn't think of it again. And I saw a clip today where it was being used to show the lack of chasing back. But actually, what it did show to me was Sonny just sprinted. I think it was when he was the central striker after Richarlison had gone off. It was the most incredible burst of pace for someone towards the end of a game who should have been knackered. It was remarkable. He didn't actually end up getting to the ball, but it kind of the pressure of him there maybe led to the chance being wasted by Wolves. But yeah, that's what they all should be doing. And Kulusevski said, there was not enough discipline when we lost the ball. They had 2 or 3 counter-attacks where we were not good enough, and then they made us pay. We were too many guys up front. We were too open and not running back as hard as maybe we should. They scored a couple, and that's not good enough. This league is very hard. Every game, if you're not playing very well and it's difficult to win, we knew Wolves were very good in their counter-attack, so we should have handled it much better. So yeah, he's not saying that, the system, the tactics are everyone up top, attack. What he's saying is the idea of Postecoglou football is you've got to be fluid in your transition. So as soon as a move breaks down, people have got to have that awareness to be there for the counter-attack and the ball over the top, and then not just leave that to 1, maybe 2 players. So yeah, that's probably as far as I can go into it, really, having not been there. There's definitely frustrating areas of it. There are areas where I didn't think it was quite as bad as people were making out, but I do think these 2 weeks will be clear. But I think the key thing to remember about it all is he will get them back into their groove. He will, absolutely. I think you just have to look at the fact that they're on the cusp of the top 4, like I said, and take yourself back to what people were saying when Harry Kane left. Honestly, they'd written Spurs off. All the pundits had them outside the top 6, I think. I don't think anyone even had them in the top 6 because of it. But yeah, Harry Kane's left. Their talisman, their best player. Spurs have lost just 6 of the 25 Premier League matches since he's left. And despite the absence of a man that was scoring so many goals, they've actually scored 6 more goals than at this point last season in the Premier League. And they've conceded just 3 more, despite the fact that, it's this football that we're worried is a little bit open at times. And they've actually got 2 more points than they did at this stage last season, and they've lost 2 fewer games as well. So it kind of shows that I think without Kane, they can click as a unit. And I'm not saying that's Kane's fault at all. As I've said repeatedly, Kane in the system would be ridiculous. It would be an incredible thing to see. We got a glimpse of it against Shakhtar, didn't we? Yeah, and I think kind of got the impression that one of the kind of answers that Postecoglou gave after the game, he was as much trying to get that across to people as anything, as his players, to the media, to the fans, whoever would listen. That, it's not a side powered by one player. It is a side that needs to be a strong unit. He was asked about, I think it was James Maddison not being as sharp as he is. And after speaking a little bit about Maddison and how he should be ready now, there's no kind of reason why he shouldn't be. He said, if we're looking for individuals, we're not that team. We're not at that level to rely on individuals to win us games of football. What's got us to this point is the collective. We work really hard as a team. We've been really committed to something, and that's what's got us to this point we're at now. We are not a team that's got individuals in it that can win games of football on their own. We don't have those players. We're not that kind of team. I do think there's an element of him being a little bit contrary there. I think, next week, I don't know, Sonny scores a worldie from 25 yards and he says, oh, well, that's a player like Sonny who, like he said last week, is world class. Or you've got someone like Maddison pulls off a bit of magic. I do think he's overstating it for the effect there. I do think there are players that, individually have got that bit of magic, like Son and Maddison. And I think Kulusevski as well was very capable of beating 3 men in a drum. His goal was lovely, Kulusevski. Almost didn't even mention it. The footwork to get into past the last man, was it Dawson, I think, and then stab it through the legs of Sarr. It was a beautiful goal. Absolutely fantastic goal. So I do think they've got individuals who've got those qualities. But yes, his overall point does remain that as a unit, I think Spurs have the potential to be incredibly strong in the Postecoglou system, and they need to be to make it work. It's kind of like a machine, I guess, isn't it? It's like the team is the star rather than any single player. And at the moment, this machine, there's a couple of wires that are like shorting out. They're not quite right. They're causing issues. So you've got to find what the underlying issue is, fix it, and then the machine starts working again. And Postecoglou will do that. I've got no qualms about it whatsoever. Because like I said, he said would happen. But I just think we maybe got a little bit spoilt and ahead of ourselves. I'm talking about me. I'm not saying anyone's spoilt brats or anything. But I do feel maybe we got a little bit carried away. You know, I remember all the could we kind of talk, and I think we're seeing kind of roughly the right position for Spurs right now as they're trying to. I still feel they'll get top four. I still do. I still think they've got enough games left, and enough players who will get sharper and sharper. But they're going to have to get a bit of a move on if they are going to do that. It's going to have to come against Palace. They're going to have to get back in the gear. Click into gear, because you know they've got an opportunity for Villa and United. I think Villa have got Forest at home this weekend, while Spurs have got no game, and I think Man U are at home against Fulham. So there's a chance for all of Villa to pull ahead of that a little bit more, and a chance for United to kind of come up right behind them, albeit with the goal difference not being the same, which then obviously puts a lot of pressure on the Palace game. And this is the thing about this match, which still is sitting in Spurs' fixture list, funny enough, the Chelsea game. But obviously we know they're in the Carabao Cup final, so it's not going to happen. So still waiting for that official confirmed rescheduling. But Spurs can't really afford, if they want to stick in the top four race, to kind of have many more missteps. They're going to have to, especially with some tough games coming up after this run as well. And this is a problem, isn't it? When you kind of come up short at home, in the games that are meant to be winnable, you put more pressure on the games that were the more difficult ones on paper. So there you go. But like I say, I'm not kind of losing any sleep over it right now at all. It's just part of the transition period of a team that is being built. And I know there's people frustrated. How many times are going to be told the team's being rebuilt? How many times is? And I agree, absolutely, that the club has had too many rebuilds. But it feels like they've actually got someone that kind of knows how to rebuild it from the bottom up rather than try to apply a level on top of it, which maybe some of the previous managers have done. And I think it's something it needs. So, quick loan roundup before I head off. Alejo Vilis made his debut for Sevilla and their 0-0 draw against Valencia. His first game back after that knee injury, picked up against Bournemouth. Came off the bench in the 86th minute, and he did have a chance to win it. They had a header, which he sent at the goalkeeper. He got a little bit of praise ahead of the game by Quique Sanchez-Flores, who former Watford manager, you might remember. He said, Alejo Vilis has trained in an extraordinary way this week. He's tremendously hungry and does everything we ask of him. He's a boy who's going to mark a clear path of what the team needs again. So he's their number 10. Hopefully he'll get more and more minutes as this season goes on and some more goals so he can kind of come back to prove his point to, who knows? Who knows? I'm sure Spurs will look for another attacker this summer. But if Vilis can go on a real run and develop over these coming months, there's a great chance for him to come back and stake his claim. Explain about Jed Spence earlier. Genoa hasn't played the last couple of games. Still playing more minutes this season than he has in his entire Tottenham career thus far. 225 minutes for Genoa. Just 41 minutes for Spurs in total since he signed in the summer of 2022 from Middlesbrough. That's mad. Sergio Reguilon made his third consecutive start for Brentford. He's had a tough run of first three games. Obviously couldn't play against Spurs, but he's had City, Wolves and Liverpool in a row. He was playing as their left wing back. Difficult game for him. Liverpool's first goal, ball was knocked up in the air from a Brentford corner, was cleared up the pitch, and he didn't really go in for the aerial challenge with Jota, who then kind of had that little bit more freedom to nod it on to Nunes, who went on and scored. What he did do from the other end of the pitch, technically it was the same end of the pitch because it was second half, but Reguilon did have the shot that was parried out and Tony scored from. So, he was kind of did play his part in their consolation goal. But yeah, tough game for him. Thomas Franklin's very happy with him though. I wouldn't be stunned if they get to the end of the season, he can kind of get in a nice run of form for them that Brentford look to try to keep him. But whether he wants to stick around is another thing, or whether he has kind of designs on going elsewhere, we'll see. But I think it is a good move for Reguilón because he's going to get a lot of game time this season with them, a lot, because they just don't have the options in that position. Eric Dyer, yeah, I'm going to include him. I know technically he's going to head off to Bayern at the end of loan, but he is a loan player. And he's been quite unfortunate, to be fair. In the 3-0 defeat to Leverkusen that Bayern had, he wasn't responsible for any of the goals. I watched it. He didn't really have any kind of involvement in their 3 goals. And then he lost his place. They didn't use him too cool against Lazio, which they lost 1-0 in midweek in the Champions League. Then he only came on for the last 4 minutes at the weekend as they lost 3-2 yesterday, wasn't it, to Bochum. Which means Leverkusen now got an 8-point lead at the top of the table. Harry Kane scored late on. I would feel for Harry Kane. I know there's some people that don't want him to go off and win things, but to go there, and there's a real possibility for the first time in more than a decade, it could be that they don't look like winning any trophy, which is mad, such as their dominance in Germany. And, it's not down to him. He scored goals galore. Was it 25, 26 goals, something like that for them already? And we're only in February. He must just be thinking, it's the same thing. I've even gone here and scored loads of goals and still it's not working. I'm sure, I'm sure he'll get one eventually if it isn't this season. Tongi on the melee in Galatasaray didn't actually play. I think he had some kind of little injury. I don't entirely know what it was, but he wasn't in the squad. They won 3-0 against Ankara-Gucu. Probably killed the pronunciation of that. Davinson Sanchez scored in that game. Nice little low finish. I saw that. It's kind of a bit like Galatasaray is becoming the Spurs of Turkey right now in terms of you've got Tongi and Sanchez there. They've now been joined by Carlos Vinicius and Sergio Aurier has also gone there. Proper little Spurs base over there in Turkey. Hasn't been a good move from Dembele. 23 appearances for them, but he's only had 644 minutes across those games and registered 1 assist. Quiet day for Troy Parrott, Excelsior Rotterdam. Didn't even have a shot on goal or a key pass or a dribble in the game, which is surprising for the young man who's had 10 goal involvement in 19 Eredivisie matches so far this season. 7 goals and 3 assists. Been doing very well. Like I said, clubs in Serie A, Championship, Eredivisie all looking at him for a potential move next season. We'll see what his future holds. But last couple of games have been a bit difficult. Excelsior, I think they're 15th in the table. They are a team in the lower end of the Eredivisie. And I think that's why people are looking at him, because he's still getting these goals and assists despite that. Joe Rodon is just doing so well at Leeds. He's doing brilliantly. Another couple of wins for them this week. One against Plymouth, who they've played in the FA Cup recently. Alfie Devine and Ashley Phillips obviously playing for them. So they won 2-0 against them. I think they also beat his old team, Swansea. Was it 4-0? Yeah. Rodon has been an integral part of 5 clean sheets in a row for Leeds in the Championship and 7th clean sheet in a run of 8 wins. It's been so well. I keep reading all the Leeds Live, do their player ratings, and he's just always just an important part of defence. He's playing so well. I think Spurs are going to get decent money for him in the summer. I think he's whacking his value right up for them, and Leeds don't have an option to buy him. So, if they come up, they're going to be properly competing against teams, because I would imagine that a Premier League team will come in for him after that. I hope for him it is Leeds, because he looks very settled there. Talking of Alfie Devine, Ashley Phillips, obviously lost that game against Leeds. Phillips did fine. He got a good review from that game from what I read. Devine, not as good, but Devine had a very kind of good game in the week. He got an assist against Coventry in a 2-2 draw. which Ashley Phillips played very well as well. But it was quite interesting. I grabbed some quotes that Alfie Devine said after the game. He said, where is it? I've got him here. I think the first 3 games, I've been quite disappointed with myself because I know that's not me. I think today, this was the midweek game, just shows that I'm getting a lot more comfortable in and around the team and especially on the pitch. Once you get the connections and the bonds on the pitch, it makes your life a lot easier when you are on there. Obviously, you can't get that without the players helping you. I know Fozzie, which is Ian Foster, the manager there, used to be his England youth coach. I know his system quite well and the way he wants to play, but trying to adapt to a new league and a new position at the same time, I struggled in the first 3 games, and I know that. I think today's performance reassures me a bit that I'm getting used to it and I'm getting a lot more comfortable. And on operating as an attacking midfielder, whereas at Port Vale he'd been a little bit deeper, he said, when I went into Port Vale, that was what I came in to do. Obviously, throughout the season, things happen, players get injured, formations change, and I sort of found myself in that deeper role. But I think that's why I was a bit frustrated with myself when I came here, because I know this is the role I want to play, and I do want to play higher up. And the first 3 games, in my opinion, didn't really show I was capable to do it in this league. After today, it reassures me that I can do it, and having the other 2 players with me helps me massively. So yeah, all part of his development and good stuff for young Alfie Devine. Japhet Tanganga, unfortunately, he is still looking for his first win at Millwall. What I would say is that at least he is playing minutes. That's the key thing for him. He didn't play any at Augsburg, so he has been playing now. I think he's got 3 or 4, maybe 3 in a row, 3 starts. He didn't play in midweek, I think probably as just a precaution because he's played so little games this season, so few games this season, and obviously had that knee injury at the start of the year. But yeah, he's that was a big one at the weekend. They lost 2-0 at home to Sheffield Wednesday, a bit of a relegation battle, that one. But hey, he's getting football, and that's what he needs at this stage of his career. It's kind of like a bit like Sess, a player that had so many injuries, just needs a run of games, and yeah, at least Japhet's getting that. Matthew Craig, big week for him. In midweek, he got his first assist as a senior professional, and then at the weekend, he got his first goal as a professional for Doncaster Rovers in their 5-1 win against Grimsby Town. Getting lots of praise, Matthew Craig, for his recent performance, which is great. If you're not aware who he is, Scotland under-21 international, I think he's 20. Can play at the back, but mainly is defensive kind of midfielder type, and yeah, he's doing well there. He's doing well. It's good for him and his progression and development. Very composed finish as well from him. And the last one of the bunch, we're not going to include Ivan Perisic because obviously he's out injured and we're waiting for his return. You can't include Lucas Bergvall and Luka Vuskovic because technically Vuskovic is on loan in Poland, but he's not on loan from Spurs. It's a strange one. But I will dip in and out to see how he's doing. I will. Even Perisic still kind of obviously in his rehab. I think he was doing some grass work. Work on the grass, not cutting the lawn, mowing the lawn. Josh Keeley is the last of the main bunch, though. Playing for Barnet. They won 4-2 at Failed in the National League. That's why I keep saying it like that. They're third. Hotton Hills are Bromley. I didn't realise how far Chesterfield are ahead in that league. They're 20 ahead of Bromley, who are 2 points clear of Barnet, albeit Barnet have got a game in hand. But yeah, no, he's been doing well there, Keeley. Josh Keeley, people very pleased with him, only 20 years old as well. Republic of Ireland under-21 international. Very talented young goalkeeper. Yeah, that's it really. I think that's probably the most I can do. Like I say, kind of having been away and only returned late last night. I had a very nice time in Disneyland Paris. Thanks for asking. It was very good. It's good fun. And the weather was decent on the whole as well, which was very nice. Obviously, no Premier League football this weekend, so I'm going to head to see the under-21s at the stadium. They're playing on a Saturday, I think it is, on the Premier League Cup. So that should be good. Hopefully see a few of the likes of, Jamie Donnelly out there. Iago Santiago scored a lovely goal the other day against West Ham? And yeah, just see some of the other players in action as well. I haven't been able to get to enough of the under-21s game this season because they've either clashed with Spurs, the first team matches, or they've clashed with other things that were going on. So that would be good to go and see that. So if you see me at the stadium, please do come over and say hi. Had some people coming and saying hello in Disneyland Paris, which was very pleasant. Probably at 3 or 4 different Spurs fans across the 3 or 4 days there, which is very cool when you're kind of out there and seeing like-minded Spurs fans. It's always very nice. What I'll probably do next Sunday, I'll probably do a Q&A. So you want to get your questions into the comment section below. I will attempt to answer as many as I possibly can. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty to be discussed, whether it's what's going on now, whether it's to do with Postecoglou, whether it's to do with any of the players, whether it's to do with the summer transfer window, whether it's to do with the future or behind the scenes, maybe some of the staff that you're not too aware of what they do, or the academy players up and coming through the levels. Yeah, or even if, as we always have fun little questions about other topics as well, feel free to, so we'll do that probably next Sunday. And who knows, it's Spurs, so more could have happened by then. Hopefully I'll know a little bit more about Sess's hamstring problem, and hopefully it's nothing too serious for him, because just the amount of setbacks that poor young man has is rubbish. And look, when I say poor young man, I know it's relative and people are like, he's a footballer, he gets paid well, but it doesn't mean that, having what is your career kind of taken away from you through circumstances beyond your control is an easy thing to deal with. It's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. I remember having such high hopes for Sess when Spurs signed him. I was so excited by that signing. They beat, was it Man U to him, didn't they? It's just rubbish. But, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it was just a small setback and he's back and able to be the player that he can be in this career. Right, I'm going to head off now. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.